Bayou Crossing, Louisiana, was the kind of place where people still waved to each other from porches, and where the local church bells chimed louder than gossip, though not by much. Everyone knew everyone, and everyone knew Evelyn Masters. To the town, Chief Evelyn Masters, 52, was the law. A tall, sharp-featured African-American woman with a steel-grey bun and steady eyes, Evelyn had commanded respect for over 2 decades. She didn't tolerate laziness, corruption, or excuses. When she walked into a room, silence followed her like a loyal shadow. The badge on her chest wasn't just a symbol. It was a shield she used to keep the world and its grief at arm's length. But at home, the silence wasn't powerful. It was heavy. 10 years a widow. No children. No family close. Her husband, Marcus, had died of a stroke in his sleep, and Evelyn never remarried. People said she buried herself in the job, and they weren't wrong. She kept her grief locked up the same way she kept criminals, behind bars, with no chance for parole. Still, loneliness has a funny way of finding cracks in even the strongest armor. That's when Jared Kane arrived. A 29-year-old white inmate with a wiry frame and sly blue eyes. Jared had been transferred to Bayou Crossing for disciplinary reasons from a larger state prison. His file read like a red flag parade: sexual assault, manipulation, fights with guards. But he was quiet now, cooperative, charming, even. Evelyn first noticed it in the way he spoke. Measured, respectful, like he'd been raised right but went wrong somewhere along the way. "Ma'am, you're the first person here who talks to me like I'm still a human being," Jared had told her one evening after she'd reprimanded a guard for being too rough. She should have shut it down right there. But something in his tone, soft, broken, cut through her. She started checking in on him more often. A few minutes turned into 10, then 15. Conversations stretched into the late evening. She told herself it was professional. She was supervising, correcting, guiding. But deep down she knew. He wasn't rehabilitating. He was rewriting her boundaries. And in a town where image meant everything, Evelyn was beginning to slip, one unguarded moment at a time. It started with coffee. Evelyn never brought coffee into the holding area. It was against protocol, against reason. But one rainy Thursday night, she found herself walking down the hallway with 2 cups, one black for herself and one with just a splash of cream. Jared's kind. He looked up from the steel table when she entered the interview room. "Didn't know we were having company, Chief," he said with that lopsided grin that somehow always landed somewhere between smug and sincere. Evelyn placed the cup in front of him, her hand steady, her face unreadable. "You've been quiet lately. Just making sure you're not plotting another prison riot." "Quiet just means I'm thinking," he replied, picking up the cup like it was an offering from a higher power. "You're the only one around here who even remembers I can think." The room was quiet except for the rain tapping the windows. Evelyn watched him sip the coffee, the way his eyes met hers, not with fear, not with defiance, but with something more dangerous, understanding. She told herself she could control this. She was Evelyn Masters. She'd arrested drug lords, led standoffs, walked into domestic disputes with her chin held high. A little conversation with a manipulative inmate? That was child's play. But it wasn't. Their talks grew longer, deeper. Jared asked questions no one had asked her in years. "Did you ever want kids? What do you do when you go home? Do you ever get tired of pretending to be made of steel?" And Evelyn answered, not all at once, not everything, but more than she should have. One night, the door between them wasn't just metaphorical. She left the interview room unlocked. He didn't need an invitation. He crossed the floor in slow, deliberate steps, testing the space between them like a man creeping over a minefield. Evelyn didn't move, didn't breathe. Her heart slammed against her ribs. "You're lonely," he said quietly. "Just like me." His hand grazed hers. She didn't pull away. "This is wrong," she whispered. "But it's real." It happened quickly and slowly all at once. A storm building and breaking. A lapse in judgment that didn't feel like weakness, but release. When it was over, Evelyn sat in silence. Her uniform askew, her breath shallow, her mind racing. This wasn't just a mistake. This was irreversible. "You said nothing happened if I didn't want it," she murmured. "And you didn't stop it," Jared said simply, already slipping back into his controlled, quiet calm. As he walked back into his cell, untouched and untouchable, Evelyn felt the weight of the badge on her chest like a stone pressing into her ribs. The damage had been done, but the consequences hadn't even begun. Weeks passed, but Evelyn couldn't outrun the silence that followed her home each night. She worked longer hours, snapped at officers over minor mistakes, and avoided the mirror like it might betray her secrets. Every time she glanced down at her badge, it didn't shine, it burned. Her body began to shift before her mind could catch up. She was exhausted, nauseous, and emotional in ways that felt foreign. One morning, she threw up her breakfast on the side of her cruiser before even turning the key. At first, she blamed it on stress. The guilt, the shame, the pressure. Maybe it was eating her from the inside out. But the signs didn't stop. And deep down, she knew. Evelyn stopped at a pharmacy 3 towns over. She paid cash, kept her head down, and tucked the pregnancy test deep into her coat pocket. Back home, she stood in the bathroom staring at it like it might explode. 2 pink lines appeared almost instantly. Her knees gave out before her mind processed what it meant. "No," she whispered, gripping the edge of the sink. "No, no, no. This can't be happening." But it was. At 52 years old. Widowed. With no lover but one, a convicted rapist half her age, sitting in a cell just down the hall from her office. Evelyn sat on her bed that night, the test in one hand, an old photo of her late husband in the other. Marcus's smile stared back at her with quiet judgment, or maybe pity. "What would you say to me now?" she murmured. "Would you forgive me? Or turn your back like the rest of the world will?" The next day, she made an appointment with her doctor. She needed confirmation, she told herself. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she was sick. Menopause, a tumor, anything else. But the ultrasound didn't lie. And neither did the blood work. As her doctor gently closed the folder and looked up with concern in her eyes, Evelyn braced herself for the words that would shatter the last sliver of control she had left. "Evelyn," the doctor said softly, "you're definitely pregnant, and I'm afraid there's something else. Your HIV panel came back positive." The room fell into silence. And this time, there was no badge in the world that could protect her. Evelyn sat frozen in the doctor's office, her hands clutched so tightly her knuckles went white. The word echoed in her skull like a gunshot. HIV. She didn't cry. Not there. Not in front of the doctor. She nodded mechanically, took the pamphlet she'd never read, and walked out as if she hadn't just been handed a death sentence. The cold outside was nothing compared to the cold inside her. By the time she got back to her car, the tears came, hot, silent, furious. "That son of a bitch," she whispered. He knew. She didn't go home. She drove straight to the station, stormed down the hallway like a woman possessed, and marched to the records room. She pulled Jared Kane's intake file, trembling fingers flipping through page after page. There it was, a note in red ink, half buried in medical history. Inmate refused voluntary HIV screening. Prior record indicates high-risk sexual behavior. Flagged for observation. She slammed the file shut. Her stomach churned. It wasn't just the pregnancy. It was betrayal. Deep, calculated betrayal. He didn't tell her. He let it happen. He wanted it to happen. Evelyn moved through the prison wing like a ghost. She stopped in front of Jared's cell, her voice low, tight, shaking. "You knew." Jared rose from his bunk slowly, the corners of his mouth curling just slightly. "Knew what, Chief?" "That you were positive." A pause. Then a shrug. "I never said I wasn't." She gripped the bars so hard her nails bit into her palms. "You infected me." "You let me," he replied, stepping closer. "You wanted something real. And now you have it. A baby. A connection. Someone who finally made you feel." Her hand flew before she could stop it, slapping the bars, rattling the steel between them. "You took everything from me." "No," Jared said with eerie calm. "I gave you something. For once in your life, you're not the one in control." He turned his back to her and lay down, like he'd won, like the damage was done. And Evelyn, chief widow woman, stood there, broken open, realizing the infection went far deeper than her blood. It had reached her soul. The whispers started small, too small to trace, too slippery to catch. A curious glance from a junior officer. A lingering pause when Evelyn walked into a room. Papers shuffled quicker. Conversations stopped colder. Someone knew. And then everyone did. The town bulletin board, a glorified gossip chain, lit up with the kind of rumor no badge could silence. Chief Masters slept with an inmate. She's pregnant. At her age. HIV positive. Can you believe it? The mayor's office called the very next morning. "You need to come in," the assistant said tightly. "They've convened an emergency review." By the time Evelyn arrived at City Hall, her reputation had already been tried, convicted, and sentenced in the court of public opinion. The hearing room was packed with stony-faced officials, some of whom she'd mentored herself. All silent, all watching. The mayor, a man Evelyn had known for over 15 years, didn't look her in the eye. "Chief Masters," he began, "serious allegations have surfaced about your conduct inside the detention facility. These involve sexual misconduct, abuse of power, and failure to report a known health risk." She said nothing at first. Her fingers dug into the edge of the desk. Her whole body felt like a dam holding back a tidal wave. "Is it true?" someone asked. "Did you sleep with an inmate? Did you know he was HIV positive? Are you still fit to lead?" Evelyn stood slowly, her voice low but razor-sharp. "I have served this community for 27 years. I have taken bullets. I have buried officers. I have held dying children. I have done this job without scandal, without rest, and without ever asking for applause." She paused. The room was dead quiet. "Yes, I failed. I crossed a line I never thought I would. I am ashamed. But I did not prey on him. I did not abuse my power. I am not a predator." "Then what are you?" the mayor asked coldly. "A woman," she answered. "A woman who made a mistake, and is paying for it with her body, her career, and her name." The chamber remained silent. But Evelyn knew. This wasn't judgment. It was execution. And no amount of service could save her now. Evelyn resigned the next day. No press conference. No statement. Just a quiet walk out of the station she had once ruled with iron certainty. Her badge, laid gently on the captain's desk, gleamed under the fluorescent light like it was mocking her. She was no longer Chief Masters. Just Evelyn, a woman with a growing belly, a virus in her blood, and a past that now followed her like a shadow that never slept. She could have disappeared, left town, changed her name, lived out the rest of her days in silence. But silence is what got her into this mess. So instead, she did something no one expected. She spoke. It began with a letter, an op-ed in the Bayou Crossing Tribune, titled, "When the Badge Isn't Enough," a confession from a former police chief. In it, Evelyn didn't defend herself. She didn't ask for pity. She laid it bare, how loneliness carved her open, how power made her think she was untouchable, how one moment of weakness led to a lifetime of consequence. But she didn't stop there. She wrote about the prison system, how Jared Kane had manipulated not just her, but at least 3 other female guards in previous facilities. How those women had either been fired, silenced, or buried in shame. How the system protected him because no one wanted to admit an inmate could hold that kind of control. "I was not the first," she wrote, "but I intend to be the last." The article exploded across state lines. By week's end, she was invited to speak on public radio. A week later, national television. She told the world how easily predators can hide behind bars, and how the people sworn to uphold justice sometimes fall through the cracks of their own humanity. Victims, real victims, started reaching out. Women in uniform, social workers, former corrections officers. All of them had stories, and for the first time in weeks, Evelyn didn't feel small. She felt necessary, because sometimes the bravest thing a person can do isn't wear a badge or carry a gun. It's tell the truth, even if it costs them everything. The headlines had shifted. No longer disgraced police chief. Now it was inmate implicated in HIV transmission scandal. 3 more women step forward. Systemic failure in Louisiana prisons exposed. The state had no choice but to act. Jared Kane, who once smirked from behind bars like he owned the place, was suddenly pulled from his cell and placed into solitary. Not as punishment, but protection. The other inmates had seen the news. Even in prison, some sins were unforgivable. A new indictment came swiftly. Intentional transmission of HIV. Sexual exploitation of authority figures. Manipulation for personal gain. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. How a convicted rapist now faced new charges for exploiting the very people meant to guard him. Evelyn sat in the back of the courtroom the day Jared was arraigned. She wore no makeup, no badge, no armor. Just a plain black dress and the weight of every headline that had burned through her life. He glanced at her as they brought him in, shackled, thinner, but still holding that same smug curve at the corner of his mouth. "You made me famous," he mouthed. She didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't look away, because this time it wasn't about her shame. It was about his accountability. The prosecutor read the charges aloud, voice sharp, deliberate. Jared didn't speak. His lawyer entered a not guilty plea. But Evelyn knew the truth. And now, so did the world. After the hearing, a young female officer approached her outside the courthouse. "Chief." She paused, then corrected herself. "Ms. Masters. Thank you. You said what none of us could." Evelyn gave a small nod, eyes tired but steady. "Then make sure you say it when it's your turn," she replied. "Don't wait until it nearly kills you." That night she sat on her porch, her hand resting on her growing belly. The air was warm, thick with cicadas. But for once, it wasn't suffocating. Because Jared Kane was finally facing judgment, and Evelyn Masters, though fallen, had risen in the one way that mattered. She had turned her wound into a weapon, and pointed it back at the man who thought he owned her story.